Chainsaw Man chapter 135 is going to be one of those chapters where after you finish it, you're going to have more questions than you had answers going into the chapter. But you know Fujimoto's cooking up a major plot twist that is going to be revealed later on down the line, along the lines of Aki becoming the fiend for the devil that he hated the most. Only instead of the heartbreak for Denji, we have a couple of characters who might end up getting a swerve in the form of both Denji and Mitaka. At the center of everything just happens to be both Yoru, the war devil, and Fami, the famine devil. Fami is up to something and she's giving off Makima vibes right now as being a potential final villain for part 2 of Chainsaw Man, similar to how Makima was the final villain for part 1 of Chainsaw Man itself. So with my initial thoughts out of the way, let's go ahead and back things up a little bit and let's dive into the recap portion of the review. So the chapter opens up with the fallout of the fake Chainsaw Man showing himself to the world and proclaiming that he is Chainsaw Man, which leads to some people calling it BS because they say fake Chainsaw Man never transformed on the screen and others are blindly accepting what they've been told. And this leads to Mitaka being revealed as being one of the first ones who says that this isn't the case. And it's in this moment we see the ever so crass Yoru drop a truth bomb on us when she calls out Mitaka for being in love with Chainsaw Man in more than one statement. First, she says that Chainsaw Man is Mitaka's prince in shining armor, meaning that Mitaka would be the princess that Chainsaw Man saved from the castle, which I do believe Fujimoto is dropping a tease of foreshadowing for Denji, i.e. the prince in this scenario, and him saving Mitaka, the princess, in this scenario later on in the story. However, while that might have us as the audience both giddy over Mitaka realizing eventually that Denji is the real Chainsaw Man, there are a lot of us who remember how Chainsaw Man Part 1 wasn't exactly kind to Denji when it comes to the whole romance angle. From Reze to his feelings for Makima, you have to wonder if this is going to end in a similar fashion, just given what happened to both of those characters. But while we might be split on this as the audience, you got Yoru, who is more focused on the bread that she's eating than worrying about the future, and we find out why she's so nonchalant and in such a good mood after she continues to poke fun at Mitaka about being in love with Chainsaw Man, telling her that she falls in love way too easily. Yoru tells us that war is coming and that because of all of what the falling devil has done and the lasting effects of her actions, Yoru will continue to grow stronger. And we get some very insightful commentary from Fujimoto that's low-key based, which should not come as a shock to you just given what he said in the past about the gun devil and the gun devil being linked to American gun culture. What we see here is that Yoru says that when nations need money, they go to war, essentially bringing themselves up economically via a war economy, and she isn't wrong. This tactic is partly how the United States back during the Great Depression era was able to jumpstart its economy during the Great Depression, with some economic historians saying that the World War II is what actually saved the US economy during that time. This leads to Yoru saying that when this happens, people will start to remember her because they'll be remembering war, and this in turn will allow her to grow stronger, and she's going to use that as a method to kill Chainsaw Man with her renewed power, which with that logic is not exactly faulty at all. It's then that Fujimoto drops a line in the manga chapter that every person who's read Naruto's manga can relate to at least once, which is, he says, no more flashbacks. However, Fujimoto doesn't just bog us down with flashbacks, but instead he uses them in a creative way. First, he shows the collage of the scattered memories that Mitaka has of Chainsaw Man and of the Falling Devil in that whole ordeal. Then he shows Mitaka recalling them on a motorcycle, but he uses some humor to have Mitaka writing a poem in her head and having the text say that it was written by Mitaka, which is absolutely hilarious. It's cringe, but it's hilarious nonetheless. However, here's the thing. Buried in the poem itself is more foreshadowing or a potential red herring, depending on which side of the argument that you're on. Fujimoto has Mitaka refer to Chainsaw Man as being warm and human and alive. She's contrasting Chainsaw Man to herself in that poem, going so far as to call herself cold and frozen as ice. Warm bodies, they're alive. Dead bodies are cold, freezing cold. The idea that we potentially see Mitaka dead at the end of Chainsaw Man Part 2 with skin white as winter and cold as winter, I don't think that's something that we can just count out just based off off what we've been seeing so far. In particular with Mitaka having those dreams of walking down that dead alley and all those dead chickens that are piled up. That's very insightful imagery that I don't think Fujimoto has forgotten about. Now, this could be a red herring, since we know Fujimoto does love to subvert our expectations, does love to use a lot of dramatic irony, but this could also be some foreshadowing for Mitaka dying at the end of the story, but only time will tell which one of these is. Now, in the aftermath of Yoru telling Mitaka to stop thinking about all the flashbacks and just stop thinking in general, we have Fami who shows up, and we see that not only did she show up completely unannounced, but she's also taking a loaf of bread that Yoru was eating, and she did so without Mitaka or Yoru even noticing her presence, which this moment reminds me of Makima. Just as Fami casually revealed herself after letting time pass for Yoru and Mitaka to know that she was there, basically flexing on them that she had been there the entire time without them noticing. This gave me Makima vibes, in particular where during all the chaos that you had with the Darkness Devil and we saw everyone struggling in that battle, Makima showed a further hint that there was something darker than we expected with her character, where she flexed on the Darkness Devil, she dished out some damage. While it's not the same level of a flex, it's still pretty huge nonetheless. Fami reveals that she can both grant Asa Mitaka and Yoru's wishes, and we see her take advantage of both of them, being thrown off by her words by saying that she can help Mitaka in her quest to help Chainsaw Man, and she can help Yoru in her quest to kill Chainsaw Man, and she drops the info that Yoru needed to hear, which is that there is a black Chainsaw Man and there is a red Chainsaw Man, and that Mitaka and Yoru each one opposing Chainsaw Man. Fami reveals that the Chainsaw Man who Mitaka wants to help, i.e. Denji, is the one that the Church of Chainsaw Man is trying to protect and allow him to live a normal life by making him weaker, because if the church does enough to hunt down devils, Chainsaw Man will become a weak devil, which is our first red flag. And it goes back to that moment where we see Mitaka say, "Save me, Chainsaw Man," and we did not see Pochita kind of go on the rampage that we saw in part 1. Fujimoto definitely knew what he was doing, and this line right here in the chapter definitely points in that direction. This really reeks of Makima tactics. Red Chainsaw Man is Denji, black Chainsaw Man is Pochita. Just based off of how Chainsaw Man part 1 went down towards the end, it's another reason we have to keep our eyes on Fami, because I strongly believe she is in the Makima position. Meanwhile, after she reveals that Yoru wants to kill the black Chainsaw Man, she also says that in order for that to work, they'll need to turn red Chainsaw Man back into a normal human. There's another line that stands out from Fami's monologue where she says that they sisters, the 4 horsewomen devils, have no interest in the faces of humans and devils. So this does confirm the whole fan theory that exists in the community, which is that there are actually the 4 horsemen are actually the 4 horsewomen. Fami, the famine devil, Yoru, the war devil, Makima and Nayuta, the control devil. Then you have whoever's going to be revealed to be the death devil. However, that line about them not caring about faces, that stands out because Makima and Nayuta clearly know the difference and are obsessed with Chainsaw Man. Maybe it's their obsession with Chainsaw Man, but it makes me wonder if Fami is an unreliable narrator here, because everything that she's saying, while it does make logical sense, it doesn't fully add up in my opinion. Maybe it's because we as the audience know for a fact that Fami is sus, but this is giving me the vibes of saying 2 plus 2 is actually 3, and then you find out that you're missing a number. I feel like Fami is leaving something out here, and the fact that she says that you don't have to believe me, but you can believe in the Church of Chainsaw Man, is another thing that stands out. That's something you would say to hide your intentions by hiding them behind chunks of the truth in order to avoid telling a lie. She says, don't believe me, but at least believe the Chainsaw Man Church. They are trying to save Chainsaw Man. She didn't say I'm trying to save Chainsaw Man. She just says that they want to save Chainsaw Man. In particular, they want to save the Chainsaw Man that Asa Mitaka wants to save. I really think Denji, by getting weakened like this, they're going to take the opportunity to kill him and Pochita. Something to keep your eyes on. Now, this also leads to Asa Mitaka stepping out the shadows of her apartment and beginning to tear up the world by killing 10 devils in such a short period of time and not hiding her identity in the process like she's been doing in the past. And this leads to some people going so far as to speculate that all the kills that Chainsaw Man got credit for, they might have actually been Asa Mitaka, in particular the Eternity Devil at the aquarium, and we see a hint of conflict being dropped by having Denji clutch his fist before saying Mitaka's name, and Nayuta is shown looking up at him. So with the recap portion done, let's further unpack what we have here in the chapter, because there's a few more things I want to touch on before we get out of here. The fact that we see Yoru is not bothered by Asa Mitaka getting closer to Chainsaw Man because she's more excited about the fact that her full power can return faster is a sign of both the the power scaling growth as well as the literal character growth for Yoru. We know that she's shown a different side at times to Mitaka in the past, but what we see here is that she isn't holding a full-on grudge against Mitaka for everything that transpired. However, she's still planning to kill Chainsman, but we see Fujimoto very carefully create a believable way to have Yoru reach her full power. Think about it for a second. When we look at the previous events of Chainsman Part 2, we saw Yoru power up very slowly from the various encounters that they've had, but at the rate that we're moving, it would have taken us forever to get Yoru to her full power. By taking a situation like this where war is inevitable, it allows for a massive power creep for Yoru, while also making you wonder what the other intentions are of Fami, since we know that she was the one pulling the strings behind the Falling Devil showing up and she already tried to recruit Nayuta. This is also interesting when we consider that Fami literally told us a few chapters back that powering up Yoru is the one way that they could win the battle that's coming up ahead, which I find to be rather interesting because of what that sets the stage for. Yoru getting a power up, and the hype is beginning to build for this character very slowly, but surely it's something we have to keep our eyes on. Now, that also gets balanced out by the fact that Fami knows that Denji stopped being Chainsman, which means that we again have to look at Yoshida and start asking questions about what he's actually doing, because this would imply that Yoshida and Fami are working together to a large extent than we actually thought. The other thing that stands out is the potential love interest triangle that we see for Mitaka, because she's flat out figuring out right away that fake Chainsaw Man, he isn't the real Chainsaw Man, just off of his mannerisms, and it shows that she's been thinking a lot about Chainsaw Man. She's been very perceptive of him. This, along with the poetry, is another interesting thing to keep in mind. However, the triangle angle comes into the fact that we see Mitaka care for Denji. We know that Denji might feel some kind of way about Mitaka, but we also know that Denji and Pochita, i.e. Black Chainsaw Man, they have a very strong bond. It's not a romantic love triangle per se, but there is a triangle in effect here. And I'm wondering how Fujimoto is actually going to carry this out. Now, this is also where things get interesting, because we know that Yoru wants to kill Black Chainsaw Man, i.e. Pochita. This is going to set a huge stickler moving forward for Mitaka's feelings for Denji and Denji's relationship with Pochita, and Yoru wanting to kill Pochita, the same Pochita who bullied Makima and several hybrids on his own. I'm calling it Mitaka's death flags are planted, if for no other reason than she said, "Save me, Chainsaw Man." Fujimoto has definitely set up a lot of things for the future, and that's actually my question, you guys. Coming out of this chapter, who do you think has the most red flags around them? While you think that over, click here to watch these other Chainsaw Man videos you see on the screen right now.